Hello and welcome back to the fourth installment in a series which I haven't visited in quite some time. For those who are maybe unfamiliar with this series, Unsung Heroes is where we take a particular vehicle, a vehicle which could be obscure or not talked about enough, a car which many, even petrol heads, perhaps haven't heard of or had forgotten that they knew about. I certainly have cars like that for me, cars which I love, but I often forget about them because I don't talk about them that often. Now this car is called the Aixam Megatrak. It's technically called the Megatrak because Megatrak is not the name of the car, it's Mega, the company, and the car is called Track. Kind of strange, but it's because it comes from a French manufacturer called Aixam. They're typically known for making very small city cars. Then they had an offshoot brand from them called Mega, and they've made a couple of different vehicles, including this one and also the Mega Monte Carlo, among others. So the car technically is just called the Track, and it's made by Mega. Kind of strange, but there you go. The visuals certainly divide opinion. I personally think it's a great looking machine. It's got a chunky, very well aged, definitely early 90s style. There's a little bit of Chazetta in there, a little bit of Lamborghini Diablo, and I would say a little bit of Venturi as well. Now that Venturi connection is not surprising, because this car is also, like Venturi, a French vehicle. It's a French exotic and hardly any were built. Production initiated in 1992. It's believed it ran up until 1995 or thereabouts, and quotes are different, but some say there were 5 produced, some say less than a dozen. Technically both of those would still fall into the correct parameters, but it's kind of vague. You certainly don't see many of them around, and most of those that are cited tend to be around Monaco. But the reason why I'm featuring this car in this series isn't just because it's some random forgotten sports car from France. There are plenty of other obscure sports cars which I'm not going to talk about. The reason why I'm talking about this one is because of how oddball but also how awesome it is in a very weird kind of way. Now this is definitely a car which will divide opinion. Personally, I love this car. It's insane, but I love how ambitious it was, and as far as I'm concerned, it actually achieved what it was trying to go for. Because this is a car, and let me lay it out, and try and follow this along. It's an exotic supercar with a 6-litre, 400 horsepower Mercedes V12, a 4-speed automatic gearbox, a top speed of 160 miles per hour, with a mid-engine, all-wheel drive, 4-seater layout, with a ride height of 8 inches, which can be raised to 13 inches to go off-road, and it's as big as a Hummer. It's also the length of a Mercedes S-Class, 200 inches long. It's also incidentally 87 inches wide. And as far as height, it's, let's just say, a lot taller than your average supercar. And to top it all off, even though it's not exactly earth-shaking in terms of performance, it had a price tag back in 1992, the equivalent back then of $300,000. That's quite a bit of cash for a car which is essentially no quicker than a Mercedes SL of the time. What an SL can't do, however, is be taken through the Mojave Desert, for instance, or on the Peking to Paris Rally. That's this kind of car's capabilities. It's one of those very rare vehicles which genuinely crosses over multiple boundaries, but doesn't just do it for the sake of it, it actually does it really well. It's a crossover, technically speaking, but it's a crossover like no other, because most tend to be weird combinations of SUV with a chopped off back end for the sake of making it look like a coupe, whereas this one is a legitimate exotic car that also happens to go off-road. Now I personally think that's awesome, and the fact that it has, among all those other things, 4 seats, that really impresses me. I love that attention to detail, and I love that they actually had some level of practicality in mind. Because to be fair, with a mid-engine layout, especially with a 6-litre mid-engine layout with 12 cylinders to fit in the car, you didn't need to make it a 4-seater. They could have just had the seats positioned further back, and that would have made the car lighter. Because, to be clear, this is a 2.3-ton supercar. It weighs, in American money, 5,000 pounds. That's incredibly heavy for a supercar, so it's not too surprising that the performance isn't exactly earth-shattering. It's difficult to find acceleration times, but expect it to be in the region of, say, 5 to 6 seconds. because it's not remarkable. You've got less than 400 horsepower to work with. It's about 390, and it does weigh a lot more than pretty much any other supercar ever made. So it's not surprising that it's not exactly a Venturi rival in that way, although visually it could be. So what you've got here is an overpriced, underproduced, off-road, four-seater, mid-engine, 400 horsepower Mercedes V12 French exotic crossover coupe thing. And I love it. I love it for its craziness. I love how oddball it is. It's one of the most unique cars ever made, and it was made. That's the most awesome thing about this car, in my opinion, that they actually did produce some. It was not just a concept or a one-off made for some eccentric billionaire. They made them, at least 5 of them, maybe even more depending on reports. And I think that's so cool. Is it a supercar that you're going to see all the time? Definitely not. Not unless you live in Monaco, and even then it will be probably pretty rare. But I love the concept, and I genuinely, unironically wish that more manufacturers would do things like this. Because of all the manufacturers that could, it's the supercar manufacturers that can genuinely take these kind of risks and justify them, because they're crazy anyway. So overall, I hope you guys enjoy this car as much as I do. As I said, it does of course divide opinion. Some people consider it to be a stupid car, but that's it overall for this particular spotlight, and of course we'll spotlight a new car next week. But if you'd like to see the previous installments in this series featuring some other obscure and specialised vehicles, of course you can click through to the playlist at the end of this video to see those. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.